Anime Expo was just earlier this month. It is the largest anime-centric convention on the entire continent of North America. I got to sell in the artist alley, so here are some behind-the-scenes vlogging along with some personal opinions on what you might want to think about when you are selling in the artist alley. I landed in Los Angeles on July 1st, a couple days before the con starts. This year, the con actually allowed the artists to set up starting 2 days prior to the con, which in con numbers is day -1, so I decided to take it easy and set up a little bit on both days. Artist Alley is always in Canteen Hall, which is kind of like an underground bunker. It looks really open when no one's here, which was the case on this day, but it doesn't have the greatest ventilation when the alley is packed. However, it did look like they had expanded the width of the walkways in between the tables compared to last year, which was great. The hotel that we're staying at was about a mile away from the convention center, right in the middle of downtown LA. One of the biggest reasons that I got this room was because it had a whole kitchen with a full fridge, which was actually really great because we were here for a whole week and didn't think it was a great idea to eat out every single meal. There was a Whole Foods that was about a block away, so we tried to save a bit of money there. I was actually pretty poorly prepared for this convention. I was making merch and packing them right up to the con and for about 2 more days into the actual convention. I try not to do this because it just adds to the stress of actually being there at the con, but I had to do what I had to do. Sort of related to this, I do also want to mention I'm not going to go into my financial numbers in as much detail as I did for Anime Boston. And the reason for that is because my costs for this con were absolutely bonkers. I had some personal things that were scheduled right before this convention, and some recent changes in my health meant that I actually needed to work this con very, very differently from what I'm used to. Because of this, I had some not so normal costs, including 2 full paid helpers in addition to my partner, all of whom I covered all hotel and food expenses for. So I did also ship my entire inventory and setup instead of flying in with them, which is much, much cheaper. So all in all, it cost me more than 2 times how much it cost me to attend last year, which is saying a lot because it was already thousands of dollars last year. It was actually closer to about 5 figures in costs alone, which is really not typical for me and my level of business that I do in the artist alley. So I thought maybe it's not super helpful for me to go through it in as much detail as I did for the last vlog. I also want to state that my biggest joy in doing Artist Alley is going to cool places and eating good food with good company. So, despite my high costs, I still treated myself to a lot of good food. Like this place I went to in the afternoon. It was a little tea shop that had really cute set menus and a big selection of teas. The place was so charming, and I got this really aesthetic flowering lychee tea. It was delicious. We were also right next to Japantown, so we headed over and walked around because an AX trip is not complete without a Japantown pit stop. We stocked up on some food and snacks at the grocery store and the bakery. On day 0, we went back to the convention to finish setting up. It took me and my helpers about 4 or 5 hours to get everything set up, including picking up packages from the UPS. It took a while, especially because I did not fully plan out my table beforehand, but it turned out okay and we managed to fit everything on my table, including my little Crow Noir shrine. By the time I was done, there were more and more artists setting up, so the artist alley was starting to look a little bit more lively. This was also true outside of the convention center as well, as attendees started to show up in town to pick up their badges. AX is always fun to see because you'll see kind of pop culture related advertisements spill out onto the city around the con center, and it's always so funny to see like super anime advertisements blown up to huge sizes. Have you played the critically acclaimed MMORPG Final Fantasy XIV? I think, what was the rest of it? It's like... We closed off the day with dinner at Yup Duck in K-Town. We came here last year and it was so spicy but so delicious. We had to go back. Look at all this cheese. Day one for this convention was a Thursday and also the 4th of July. Because AX always falls across the weekend through 4th of July, the actual days of the week are always a little bit different each year. Last year it was actually Saturday through Tuesday, which meant that the first day was a Saturday and it was crazy busy. And compared to that, I felt like this Thursday was actually really chill. You can still see some lines and crowds here, but a lot of it was before the convention actually opened, and from what I can tell, once the convention did open, there were basically no lines getting into the venue itself. The artist alley itself was still busy, but it was still walkable and not nearly as musty as I felt it in previous years. Bit of a spoiler, but based on analysis of my finances over the entire weekend, I did do the best on my first day, as always. If you watched my last vlog about Anime Boston, you might remember that I mentioned I always do best on the first day. After the last vlog, I actually dug a little bit more into my numbers to get to the bottom of why that is the case. Well, most artists generally seem to do the best on Saturday instead. And what I found was that actually the number of sales, at least based on what I have recorded, were actually still the highest on Saturdays. But the average amount of money per sale on my first days were consistently higher than any other day, so that I still made the most money on the first day compared to the busiest day, which is actually Saturday, based on the number of sales. After some more analysis and discussion with friends and helpers, we've theorized that the most likely reason for this is because I have a couple of higher ticket items that I sell that are either niche or unique enough that customers, thankfully, will buy it on the first day without waiting to browse around or think about it and come back later. I am aware that many of my items fall under the niche fandom category, and perhaps that is why my sales on the remainder of the days falter, because after the initial rush of niche fans, my work does not resonate as much with a majority of the remaining fans that visit on the weekend. Every now and then, a discussion pops up about selling trendy versus niche fandoms, and in that similar vein, whether you should do fan art or original art. My opinion on these topics is ultimately that it really depends on the artist and what their goals are. I do think a balanced combination for trendy versus niche might be the most optimal. So for example, for my own personal work, I may have a product lineup that caters to more dedicated niche fans, but having a handful of merch that aligns more with mainstream trendy things could maybe allow me to continue to pull in a little bit more customers through the latter days of the convention. I do also want to point out that I am a firm believer in making artwork only for things that you as a person enjoy as well. I think not only is it very mentally taxing on someone to work on things they are disinterested in, I think genuine love and interest for a particular IP does facilitate the production of artwork that will actually resonate with the fans. Day 2 was a Friday and not a federal holiday, so I thought folks might go back to work and that it was going to be slow, but it was actually still quite busy. This year, my friends Lucid Sky and Riri Mon and I were all able to get tables next to each other, so we decided to set up a little guild with a stamp rally. It was the only one that I did this year, but it was so much fun. This is the second year doing a project like this with these two friends. Last year it was travel themed, and then this year it was RPG guild based. And in both years it's been original character themed. Regarding the pros and cons of doing original art versus fan art, while I do think it's easier to get your art out there with fan art, it doesn't mean that original art does badly. At the end of the day, people will gravitate towards things that make them feel something. So fan art is the easiest in this sense because characters are easily recognizable and the viewer will automatically associate how they felt about that character or IP with your work. However, you can still elicit emotional response with original artwork. So for example, by being relatable or funny, just through the sheer beauty or cuteness or coolness of the artwork, or by showing a narrative that pulls people in. So one of the biggest pros I think about original art is that while it may not resonate with as many people as fan art, it has the potential to really hit a nerve with a smaller number of people. However, it is true that at the end of it, the demographic of the customers at the event make a huge difference. Most fans coming into artist alleys at an anime con are relatively young, and they are there to see their favorite anime or video game or Japanese pop culture related things. And that is going to be what they look for in a fast-paced artist alley. It's probably going to be different if you are at an arts and crafts fair or a night market or even a Comic-Con. I also do want to point out that what I've said so far is based on the assumption that you want to sell in artist alleys. For folks who aim to move to dealers and then beyond that, it's a bit of a different story. There are actually dealer halls that ban fan art altogether, and I think it is more common for companies to hand out cease and desist letters in the exhibit hall, which is, I believe, what happened at this Anime Expo as well. I think this is because dealers historically was geared towards like official merchandise and resellers, whereas Artist Alley is, at least in the past, been assumed to be individual fans or small businesses that don't stand on the same playing field as the folks in dealers. Therefore, if your goal is to build a bigger brand, then I do think original work is going to be really the only viable way forward. At the end of it, whether you do fan art or original, niche or trendy, it really is up to what you as an artist have as an artistic goal. There's no wrong answer, and you can make anything work as long as your approach and your goals are aligned. Speaking of what you want to do as an artist, I dropped by LA's Gallery Nucleus in person for the first time. I did participate in a Power in Numbers gallery showing once before, but never had the chance to physically visit, so it was very, very cool. I think it would be really nice to see my art in something like this in the future someday. Day 3 was my Oshi's birthday, so I went to the convention sporting his shirt. And we first made a pit stop at Bottega Louie, which is this really nice pastry shop. It was about a block away from my hotel. I actually come here almost every single year I'm at AX. Downtown LA is mostly walkable, but it's in sort of a poor state in some parts, so just something to keep in mind for anyone else planning to stay in the area in the future. The hotel we were at was actually one of the places the official Anime Expo shuttle takes a stop at, but it only runs about once or twice an hour, and I think we only used it once throughout the weekend. The third day was a Saturday, so it was the busiest and most crowded day at AX, but even then there were no lines to actually get into the convention once the gates had been opened. I heard that this was because of several changes made by AX, including 5 locations of gates which had been improved from the years before, closing off the roads around AX so people can hang out outside, and also early opening of some parts of the convention to prevent overcrowding in like the main lobby area. This didn't change the fact that the artist alley was super packed, but I do still think it was more breathable than previous years. Day 4, the last day. It was actually still quite busy throughout the convention, with folks trying to see everything before heading home, but again, very breathable overall. One thing about the Artist Alley is that they did open earlier than the advertised 9 a.m. starting time every single day. The AA staff did tell us to be present and ready early in previous years as well, but this year they really meant it. On one hand, I do agree that this may have alleviated the crowding outside of the hall, but it also meant that we, the artists, had less time to walk around and chat with others before the convention actually opened. Sunday is the shortest day for Artist Alley out of the 4 convention days, and therefore the total sales number was the smallest, but it still felt really busy. All in all, through the weekend, I made a solid amount of revenue. It was a little bit less than last year, but considering several factors, including my absolutely Chad placement in the front of the alley last year, and the fact I had helped organize 2 stamp rallies instead of 1 that brought more visitors last year, I think the difference is probably within expectations. Unfortunately, with the absolute insane costs associated with AX this year, I actually just about broke even with this convention after taking into consideration all of the material and manufacturing, printing costs, etc. associated with the merchandise I sold as well. Does that mean the con wasn't worth it? Well, for me personally, AX is always a bit of a work hard and play hard type of convention, and I knew going in that my costs likely meant I won't be making much profit. I still got to meet a lot of friends and fans, ate good food, enjoyed myself around the con and around LA, and on top of it, made back my crazy costs. So I have to say I would still do it all over again, and it was worth it.
Oh my god. We're done!
And that is it for Anime Expo 2024. My helpers were driving home that night back from the LA area to the Bay Area, so we teared down in like an hour and headed back to the hotel. There were so many lovely people who stopped by to say hi or even dropped off gifts. So thank you so much to everyone who was there. And here's to hoping I get in again next year, because I will definitely do this all over again.